photos. Among them was Ed, the unwashed, who laundered money, and Sweetie, who resold the candy Fingers had stolen from children. There was a blackmailer named Benny the Squeeze, a murderer named Patsy the Murderer, and a Patsy named Michael the Cohen. There was a knee-breaker named Freddie the Whack, and a nattily-dressed racketeer named Paul the Manafort. And they all, led the cheers for the man with the yellow feather. They and the rest of the Upskirt Boys, for that was what they called themselves, were greatly amused by the idea of their buddy, whom they all secretly considered almost unbearably vulgar and thin-skinned and having an oniony old man smell, becoming captain. "Let me be captain!" the man with the yellow feather yelled. He had never been a captain before. He had never steered a ship of any kind or size, and had insulted the previous captains loudly and often. In fact, for years, this man had been telling his fellow passengers how much he didn't even like boats. He had said over and over that all ships were bad, and everyone running them was bad. In fact, he loathed everyone on the ship, unless they were willing to loan him money, or were women in bathing suits. "Let me be captain," he said again. Fingers and Sweetie and Pete the Pipe, forgot to mention Pete the Pipe, he hit people with pipes, laughed, because the idea of their friend becoming captain was demented. It was bonkers. Many other passengers laughed too, because all the passengers knew the man with the yellow feather to be clownish and not the least bit qualified. He was also known to all as someone who lied so often it was considered involuntary and incurable. When he had $43 in his pocket, he said he had $76. When he lost at cards or golf, he walked away, and then told the first person he encountered that he'd won. When there was no reason to lie, he lied. He lied about the time of day while standing under a clock. Between that and the fact that he often joked crudely, everyone assumed that this, too, was a lie or crude joke. "This time, I'm not lying or joking," he said, and put on a serious face, pouting his lips as serious people do. Then he put his hand on his heart and sang a patriotic song for as long as he could remember the words. This patriotism was confusing to those passengers who remembered that when the ship had been at war some years ago, and all the young men and women of the Glory had fought with swords and cannons to protect the ship and its thousands of innocents, the man with the yellow feather had hidden in the bowels of the ship, looking through pornographic magazines. "Let's hear him out," said a grandfather of 9, who in every way was sensible and true. The passengers asked the man with the yellow feather how he felt about taxes. "Only suckers pay 'em," he said. "Hooray!" said many of the passengers. They thought this a novel approach to paying taxes, to not pay them. With that one statement, the candidacy of the man with the yellow feather gained considerable momentum. "I declare," said the grandfather of 9, who in every way was sensible and true, "that we need someone like this to shake things up." The passengers all mulled this idea and began discussing it in earnest. The idea of shaking things up, anything from one's toothpaste to one's shoes, held a certain inherent appeal to most of the ship's citizens. To them, shaking things up held the promise, however irrational and unproven, that everything shaken or tossed randomly into the air might come down better. Somehow in the flying and falling, steel might become gold, sadness might become triumph, what had been good might become great. "Shake things up! Shake things up!" This chant was started by a gaggle of teenage boys, who were only half serious, and who had most recently been seen urinating their names onto the shuffleboard court. Amid the noise, the ship's first mate, a courageous woman who had stood by the previous captain's side for too many years to count, stepped forward. "My fellow passengers," she said, "with all due respect,